Hey, everybody, welcome to a session of CISO Talk. I'm Pete Nicoletti. I'm a field CISO of the Americas at Checkpoint. And today I have one of my oldest friends and colleagues from the industry, and we're going to have a great conversation. We've got Jim Reavis. He is the president and CEO of the Cloud Security Alliance, and he has been involved in cloud security for how young are you, Jim? It's been a year or two, right?
Yeah, I started in the industry when I was 5 years old, and so been in it for about 30 years. So yeah, and actually Checkpoint, and we really appreciate your support as a corporate member. But sort of got my start in the very early years in the industry. I was doing Firewall One implementations, gauntlets, stuff like that, and so it's great to see what a venerable name Checkpoint still is, and how it does just wonderful contributions to the industry.
No kidding. And Checkpoint was my very first firewall, and it actually got me in the business. My ISP was hacked.
Nah.
Solaris system was hacked. And a friend of mine said, you need a firewall. And I'm like, what is that?
Yep.
And that's what really got me literally down the rabbit hole, the cuckoo's nest, and chased down the hacker involved and put him in jail. But it was with a Checkpoint firewall, so that was my first experience as well. So you and I have a very parallel career, and Jim, we really, you have a unique perspective. You're at the top of, you're running an industry uh, group that is extremely well respected. I remember when it was small. I remember when all of us could meet in one room, and you were just getting started, and I was helping out a little bit on some of the boards, and it's grown. Now there's local chapters, there's membership all over the world. Your leadership in white papers and research is literally the top-notch stuff. The zero trust stuff that you guys are putting out, the cloud security matrix is awesome. um, Jim, so with your unique perspective, what are you seeing? You're talking to a lot of companies, you're talking to consultants, you're talking to a lot of security companies. For the purpose of this interview, what are you seeing as some of the biggest cloud security risks that still remain out there?
Yeah, it's interesting where we see some new things, but we see a lot of areas that continue to repeat themselves, a little bit of Groundhog's Day as well. And it all sort of comes together under this theme of, when we started, this was just something people were kicking the tires on, but there's just such massive adoption, and it's everyone. It's companies that try to be leading edge, but it's the ones that are following. It's the ones that kind of wait for everybody else. And so, you see a few different things that are definitely concerning and of issue to us. And one, let me start with, some people have characterized cloud as it's a bunch of APIs, which you look at it from that perspective, that's what it is. You use an API to access so many different resources. And even the White House recently had a software summit for open source software. And so, a big concern, I think, is understanding, as we build out applications, whether it's a really large enterprise or it's like a fintech company or a SaaS company wanting to do things, that concern about where is that software, or if we have these fast moving 0 days or other vulnerabilities, discover the log4j, other things like that. And all of a sudden you say, how much of that am I using in my organization? So really that API security, understanding the provenance, having good software development processes, methodologies are critically important. Another thing with like moving fast, and that's what agile DevOps, when we talk about all the different sort of modernized ways of doing IT, in the cloud, you can do everything on demand. And the software development processes have moved so quickly that we're just talking about having to battle against speed in the organization, and we want to enable it. We want to enable that agility. We're also fighting it a little bit. And so I hear from so many organizations, large and small, just getting their arms around all of their cloud instances and all the different services they're using. And, you know, I don't like to get a lot into, well, here's a specific new product category around it. I mean, certainly the security posture management, things like that you hear, but definitely wanting to understand, hey, do we have hundreds? Do we have thousands of containers? Do we have millions of containers and serverless? And are we using a lot of different accounts? And do we have good sort of segregation between how we are archiving, backing up information, and how we're managing things? So there is this overall just awareness, visibility, maintaining consistent hygiene, consistent versioning of things is very important. You know, kind of related to those things, I hear a lot, and I think it's regulatory driven, is systemic risk, understanding our third party, even fourth party risk, and being able to peel the layers there end up being pretty important. So, I mean, you're hearing things that are, you could say, are somewhat agnostic to cloud, and certainly we watch, and, you know, we do our top threats research, and we want to understand, hey, is there like some of these very, very sophisticated hacker groups going to attack the cloud providers, you know, directly, do some of the cloud hopping attacks, move laterally, all those sorts of things. And we're concerned about that, but we hear so much of this hygiene and making sure we're updating things correctly, making sure that our people are trained, making sure we have enough of a workforce, making sure we have enough automation going, because it's just going so fast that people are concerned that a mistake here or there, or forgetting to use or architect things with the right amount of redundancy, availability zones, things like that, those all come into play. So it's definitely a lot for us to all be thinking about, and we try to look at how we can help with a lot of different, both educational strategies, frameworks. A lot of it's awareness about what you should be doing, and showing organizations that are doing this right.
Wow, Jim, I didn't know that a simple question would come out with about 20 or so big thoughts. You know, it's true though, when we first started talking about cloud, it was just reliability, you know, and could it be made redundant, and, you know, looking at the layer 1, 2, 3 stuff that you know, just to make sure that it was as good as my data center. And now, with the business moving as fast as the business wants to move, now it's how do we support the business and not get in the way and lubricate the business's desire to support faster and faster development. And I think you've really hit upon some things that we're seeing as well. You know, the developer risk, the supply chain risks. You know, we're seeing a lot of examples that, you know, you mentioned Log4j, and you were about to talk about software bill of materials and second and third and fourth party risks. Those are things that are really challenging these days, and there's no, you know, and I think awareness is definitely the first step. You guys do a fantastic job at awareness with your research that's shared with just a simple registration, and then your spam is always readable, by the way. So you know, all your follow-up emails, once you do sign up for research, they actually are targeted and well received. And I actually do circulate that within our company. Your latest zero trust stuff that, in fact, one of Elier, one of my colleagues, has been very, very focused on. It was a subject of his master's program. I didn't realize that why he was such a good expert. Then I started getting into it, and he's really peeled back the layers and worked with you guys. So you know, and misconfigurations you touched upon. that's a huge risk. We're still seeing, from our viewpoint, we're seeing a lot of misconfiguration risk, and
Mhm,
it's really back to that speed,
mhm.
you know. So what are you seeing, you know, once your efforts towards recognition of the problem, what do you think the company's next steps are? uh, Getting involved with the CSA, getting involved in research, I imagine. What do you think? What can a company do that perhaps maybe is new, or just really wanting to be mature? Because a
Right.
lot of people, everybody's using SaaS, whether
Yep.
you know it or not. Uh, but people that are wanting, or companies that are wanting to leverage cloud, and they're wanting to do it in a secure fashion, what kind of thoughts and process do you think you could offer up?
Sure. So, I can come at this from sort of a analytics approach on what we see organizations do in terms of engaging with us. And our most popular download, which, as far as we can see, every global 2000 company has downloaded it multiple times, and it doesn't end there. It's companies of all sizes. But our cloud controls matrix, which we recently updated to version 4, it provides a really good framework of understanding the overall governance of the organization, how you should be thinking about these problems in terms of different layers of the application, or down into the plumbing of your organization and a lot of the technology, that third party that we talked about, as well as mapping that to a lot of other security standards you might use. So it ends up being a really good framework to sort of think about our organization, our goals, our risks, this shared responsibility model, and understanding what does that mean, because a typical largest organization is probably using multiple major cloud infrastructure providers and then thousands of SaaS applications. So that ends up being a really good sort of framework for you to look at the priorities in your organization and assess that maturity you're talking about. Then we see organizations that, okay, let's get our workforce trained, and it's not exclusive to us. We see a good combination of people saying, hey, we want to get specific provider education because we got to really get into the specifics of how they do serverless functions or things like that. But our education, the certificate of cloud security knowledge, certificate of cloud auditing knowledge, provide a really good vendor neutral view of a lot of that technology. And you've mentioned a couple of times a newer initiative we have. We've actually found this idea of taking zero trust not as specific technology or architecture, but as a philosophy of least privilege, a philosophy of no implicit trust of anything, to go through either on like high priority business issues in the cloud that you might uncover with Cloud Controls Matrix or other places, and actually go through an exercise of looking at where the issues are there from a zero trust perspective. But education, getting involved in working groups. If there's a specific working group for a specific problem you're having, there's a white paper we may have written 3 or 4 years ago that is very relevant to what you're doing today, maybe with key management, things like that. So getting involved in research, either as participating or just as a consumer of it, looking at that education, creating an educational roadmap for your security team, and sort of having that governed by the higher level best practices that we have. And so you can do it online, you can do it with local chapters, wherever you might be. You can go to the big conferences, and we'll be there. But pretty much for any sort of modality of how you're trying to learn or which wave you're trying to jump in based on your maturity, we've got something there for you. And again, we make all of our research freely available. Not a great business model. That's why I'll keep working, way past you, Pete. But it's something that we really feel like we have a commitment and an obligation to raise the baseline of security everywhere around the world.
Jim, it's awesome, and people do appreciate that. And vendors like Checkpoint are members and help pay the bills. So uh, flipping, and you're right. I mean, you guys are not, you're not going to retire, based on just simple membership. But it's been a passion of yours, Jim, for many years, and that passion shows through with the people that you've surrounded yourself with. Your team is just awesome. You've got an international team that's unbelievable, that offer up to speak at different groups and share their knowledge and capabilities. Changing gears just a little bit, how is the Cloud Security Alliance STAR program going? Because this is going way back when it was just starting out, and of course I took two of my companies through STAR, but I haven't talked about or thought about it for a couple of years. How's that working out, Jim?
Yeah, so STAR for people is our organizational cloud assurance program for cloud service providers, and we actually started it, and it did go slow for several years. It's now 10 years old, but it's the largest cloud security repository where you can go to find out what cloud service providers have done to align themselves with our best practices. It's way larger than FedRAMP and others based on just the number of entries. We're pretty close to 2,000 right now. And the adoption is pretty interesting now that it was about 2 months ago, we signed an MOU with the Motion Picture Association to look at how they make our best practices here actually central to the entertainment industry. We just completed phase 1 of a project with the Cyber Risk Institute, which is a spinoff out of BITS, to actually make Cloud Controls Matrix and STAR central to the cloud protection profiles that they are seeking to be sort of the standard within financial services. The government in Italy actually requires STAR for any cloud service to go through to be in the public administration there. So we have a lot of different things like that. So it's definitely built a lot of momentum. There's so many of those Global 2000 I talk about that they actually require it, or they use that as their vendor assessment procurement step to see what can I find out in CSA STAR about that organization. So it's something we definitely encourage small to large cloud service providers to be taking a close look at that, getting in there, because you are going to expand your access to the market. It's going to prevent the need for you to do multiple sorts of one-off proprietary assessment questionnaires if you are going with the standard. And it really helps the consumer have better views of what's out there, what the providers are doing, and it makes it more efficient for them to keep up with their business that wants to go and procure new cloud services. So it's going very well, and we're seeing those sorts of indicators that other industries are coalescing around STAR as something that we need to take very seriously, and we need to look at how we're governing that, because there's a lot of trust that goes into that. So we're thinking a lot around that, and we're thinking a lot about partnerships to make sure we can do more automation and more continuous monitoring, because we know with all of these, and we're not going to exclude STAR from it, you go get certified, you go get assessed, and then you change things the next day.
Right. Wow, that's awesome. You gave me a couple of news tidbits that I thought I followed the CSA pretty closely, but I didn't know a couple of those news items. That's pretty cool. All right, so Jim, I'm usually the one getting interviewed, so this is kind of a unique spot for me. And the one question that I always start scratching my head when people ask me is, and I'm going to ask you this one, so this is going to be fun. Look out into the future, Jim. What is on your long range radar? What are you guys thinking about and worried about and concerned about and ready to attack head on, because you guys always attack risks and issues head on? What are you seeing in the future that we need to kind of pop our heads up and look at, Jim, as your final question of this fun interview.
Yeah, sure. I'll say three things really quickly. I think as technology gets bigger and bigger, we all get concerned about, do we have control as organizations, as humanity, and everything else. And I see, actually, it's been immature, but I see blockchain having a real fundamental role, and we're looking really closely at that, at how we sort of bring this level of ownership and responsibility back. And one example I see that happening in years out is using blockchain-based smart contracts to actually govern your relationship with your different cloud providers. So, hey, it goes down, or there's a problem here, and it automatically credits you. It's not something you talk about, it's in the smart contract. And so the business arrangement, it's going to be preordained there. So I think that's really interesting. We actually
You have
spend
a
a lot of
working group. You do guys have a working group on blockchain. Yeah. So,
Yep.
right. Okay.
Yep, we
That's
have
an
a working,
awesome, you've got a good one already.
yeah, and it's not just cryptocurrency, it's definitely looking at that sort of fundamental infrastructure. I think cloud and blockchain together is how we're going to do cybersecurity right, and again have the shared responsibility right, and return control to individuals and organizations that want it. Quantum, something that we've created a Y2Q program. Like, you remember Y2K, maybe some of the listeners don't, but we've put an 8-year target that we've got to get a lot of our infrastructure updated and do things today to be ready for that. I think that's really important. And finally, we have a lot of different places. One of my earlier organizations I was working for as an advisory board member was PGP. And I've always just like loved encryption and the importance of it, but we always got to make it better and more comprehensive. And so there's some good things out there with confidential computing and things like that, but really understanding key management, really understanding all the different iterations, which is complicated with the layered model of cloud, so that we can really make encryption and data protection, protect privacy, all these things that are really important for humanity. I think that it's going to continue to play just a very important role, but it's got to grow up, it's got to be better, it's got to be more pervasive.
Wow, 3 good ones: blockchain, quantum, and privacy, insured privacy. Those, I don't think you could have picked 3 better topics there for the future. And I think we're going to have to leave it at that and come back to you in 10 years and see how your predictions worked out.
Okay.
Well, actually, we'll talk to you in 2 weeks at RSA, Jim. So,
Okay. All right.
Jim, this has been great. Your website is cloudsecurityalliance.org, right?
Cloudsecurityalliance.org.
And all the research is there. We highly encourage that minimally get an individual membership. There's student memberships, there's multiple education paths. I've got to check out that auditor one. I know you guys announced it a bit back. I haven't looked at that, so I'm going to have to take a look at that. And the research is always top notch, Jim. And fantastic to reconnect with you briefly for this interview. And all of us here at Checkpoint appreciate what you guys do for the industry, because we're basically working in shoulder to shoulder to make the industry more secure. So we certainly appreciate everything you guys do, and we'll do everything we can to support it. So with that, any final thoughts, Jim?
Well, Pete, I want to again thank you very much. It's a partnership that with organizations like Checkpoint that let us do what we need to do, and you provide a great area both to provide us strategic input, to enable us to do this research, and to really amplify the things we do with your community. We really appreciate that very much, and let's just continue this journey together.
Awesome, Jim. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. It's always great to hear from the top man at the Cloud Security Alliance, and we will continue to do that, sir.
All right. Appreciate it. Take care, Pete.